Every form of art ends up having specific genres. These genres then tend to fall out of favor for one reason or another. One of these is the good old hack and slash, a mainstay with the arcades of old, but nearly forgotten in the modern age. One company, however, stood their ground, making some of the most liked modern iterations of it. That company is Vanillaware. Today's video is however not about them, but a small team called OTK Games that took heavy inspiration from them with their first title, The Vagrant, or on console, Sword of the Vagrant. I tried to find a better answer as to why the name was changed on console, but all I found is that it was probably done so that when someone as an example googles The Vagrant story walkthrough, that they don't get flooded with results for Vagrant story for the PS1. Before I roughly cover the story, I want to quickly go over the other aspects of the game. The Vagrant boasts an open world which is split into 5 areas, and despite it being a 2D game, I actually thought that it feels pretty open. This can be attributed from the maps having multiple exits, which are not only on the sides, to how different a lot of the areas feel and look, and to the many interspersed battles preventing you from zooming through them. Speaking of battle, the most important aspect in a hack and slay is the combat, and in the Vagrant it is done pretty well in the beginning. Every skill and combo you unlock provides you with more opportunities to defeat your foes, making each battle feel like a nice little opportunity to try out a new set of skills. This however gets sadly thrown out in the endgame, as there's a skill that overshadows all, Tornado Slash. Once you unlock it, there won't be anything else that you'll be using against stronger foes and bosses. This is especially true if you get your hands on an item that recovers HP for every enemy hit, and an ability that recovers your rage meter when you get hit. At that point, you are invincible, and this brings me to the biggest problem gameplay wise. By the time you reach the endgame, there's nothing left for you. You are completely OP before even unlocking every ability, and the only optional dungeon is nothing more than a boss rush that makes you even stronger. This could have been prevented by making repeated combos weaker or assigning some sort of attribute to them, like thrust, slice and smash, that makes them weaker or stronger against certain enemies. This does however not discredit how nice the combat feels up to that point, but it is a shame that it didn't last until the end. What did last until the end however is the amazing art. Each screen, NPC or enemy is a sight to behold, be it an idyllic farming village, a dark forest, a strange lab, or some kind of nightmare world. Going through the footage again, there wasn't a single time where the backgrounds disappointed. This is of course collaborated by the NPCs and monsters that fit right into the world. Even something as simple as a slime or a town's guard is full of personality, making the game an absolute visual treat. The Vagrant is of course also accompanied by an OST that is just as fitting as the art, which brings even more life into an already very lively world. At this point, if you don't want to get spoiled, then I can tell you, get this game. It's real cheap, especially during sales, and it's absolutely fantastic. Now let me get to the story, which follows a very simple loop. Vivian gets one way or another a task she needs to fulfill, which she does, only to be roped into another task, until the story mostly resolves. There is an overarching story, but the actual progression is very much tied to individual objectives that tend to get resolved by the end of said objective. Such as the first one, where someone called Lucia is to be married to the village chief's son, but instead she tries to run away with her true love. So Vivian gets asked to escort her to the meeting place. Arriving there, we find her lover Alex has been gravely wounded by her father's sword, which was in the possession of her brother. Thus the storyline ends and flows into the next one, only for the previous one to not matter anymore. This is not an inherently bad structure for a story. In The Vagrant, however, it creates a feeling of it being just too convenient. Despite the journey starting out with a purpose, it almost falls into one big sequence of lucky coincidences. Oh, how lucky that Alex bleeds over the stone that protects the village. How lucky that we get forced into labor by a witch that leads us to our goal anyways. How lucky that a second witch doesn't like the first one. How lucky that a random couple gets pursued by people that give us some needed world building, etc, etc. What I'm trying to say is that everything just seems to happen in a very efficient and straightforward way. The story never wants to stay too much on any of these smaller stories, and rushes you to the next event. We learn just what we need to know to progress the story, and that's it. Almost like we play a synopsis. So let me at this point cover the entire story in an abridged fashion. Vivian, the main character, is on a boat that gets engulfed by a storm and capsizes. Not only does she survive this, but she also wakes up on Mithrilia, right where someone needs help. That someone is Lucia, who I already mentioned. A quick recap though. Lucia is no gold digger. Instead of getting married to the village chief's virgin son, she wants the Chad blacksmith apprentice. Her family doesn't want this however, and kills the guy right on the Guardian Stone. Lucia tells Vivian to bring a bracelet back to the village, where an unwinnable boss fight is waiting. Before she dies however, a woman who doesn't know how to wear belts, called Holborn, and her boy toy Camden, who is Lucia's little brother, show up. There is no rest for the wicked, which is why Vivian has to retrieve a dark crystal to repair the Guardian Stone. As thanks, Holborn curses her and forces Vivian to get info on some bracelet from the so-called Tall Tree Witch. On their way there, Vivian tells Camden how her father went to get some milk, and how her sister afterwards trained her by being abusive. The Tall Tree Witch is very popular this time of the year, as Vivian is not the first customer. We ignore them for now and steal a crown of immortality for the witch, since she won't talk about the bracelet otherwise. What I forgot to mention is that Camden is a part of the Academy, and all you need to know is that they are evil, but Camden is too brainwashed to see it. Basically, basic cult behavior. It happens to the best of us, right? Once again, Vivian is not the only return customer. The previous ones came back as well, and are not satisfied, and security had to be called. We then take care of them and Vivian gets an anti-curse ring. How convenient. On to the next destination, Weathorn. This is where Vivian finds Count Santiago, who is in possession of the Bracelet of Soy. But like some bad romance novel, it turns out that the Tall Tree Witch was a former lover of Santiago. Let's be real for a second. All of us would want a bite of that sexy salami. But you can't have her, she belongs to the Ritz cracker. Oh yeah, what about the bracelet? Well, Holborn decided not to be so lazy and come grab it herself after all. The least she could have done is teleported us back with her. We have to go after Holborn again, since the Clots forgot to remove the curse she put on Vivian. Once caught up with Holborn, a big ass door opens thanks to Vivian's presence, but sadly the ground beneath her gave away. Catching up with Holborn again, it seems like she got her hands on a ring. Like, come on lady. You can just order stuff like this from mithriliabling.com. No need to hunt for it all over the place. Before Holborn can remove Vivian's curse though, the demon from the beginning shows up again. And as it turns out, it's Vivian's sister playing a prank on her. Sadly, Holborn didn't stick around for long enough to have someone tell her that she's on camera. Instead she fled in fear into an alternative dimension. How unlucky for Vivian. There's only one thing she can do now, find an alternative entrance. At the door to the void however, a golem-like creature steals the keys. And yes, this is just as much of a Lord of the Rings reference as the accessory called Eye of Sacrifice is a Berserk reference. While chasing down this wannabe golem, Vivian finds a bear that is getting molested. No, not that one, the one who has a human child with her. As a thanks for saving her, the bear gives Vivian an oak seed. Well, I guess oak wood is expensive, so it's a good investment for our grandchildren. However, it is now finally time to catch up with Holborn again. Vivian's sister Valerie, however, wants to first partake in some nice family bonding. Once we finally get to Holborn, it turns out that she dolled herself up and wants to do what with Camden? Lady, this is called grooming, and there's only one way to deal with groomers. With Holborn gone, what is Vivian gonna do about the curse? Oh right, my mistake, she got rid of it with the ring eons ago. Well, it seems like someone else wanted to have a good look at Holborn, but because she's gone, Vivian is now the hottest in the room. Thankfully, Force Ghost Valerie keeps them at bay, while Vivian flees with Camden. But in the end she accepts her fate as she sacrifices herself, so that Camden may simp another day. In the end she remembers her family, who together with her slowly fades away. Does anybody else wonder what happened to the mother bear? Well, seems like she went berserk, and if Vivian defeats her, she gets a powered up oak seed. So what does it do differently? Well, it unlocks the second ending, in which Vivian remembers not just her family, but also the oak seed, and she gets saved from the lustful gaze of a giant eye. As thanks for saving her, Vivian plants the seed to sprout. And that's the story, or at least my interpretation of it. It is by no means a story that will stick with you, but it is serviceable. Honestly, they could have just mostly gotten rid of the story and made some sort of roguelite out of it, and it would have still been a good game, since the art and gameplay really carry it. But sometimes it's not the game's story that sticks with us, but the personal stories that we face while playing said games. I, not too long ago, faced a medical issue that manifested for the second time in not even half a year. Because of that, I was on medical leave and kind of wasted my days away. I was filled with a lot of worry. Day in, day out, I would stay awake, doing practically nothing, sitting on my couch, watching random YouTube videos, until I fell asleep on the same couch. And this for about 1.5 months. I tried doing something else, even just playing a video game, but I couldn't stick with anything, and went back to the same behavior. This until towards the end, when I started a random game after waking up, that I bought for about $1.50. In a previous Steam sale, that is. I then played through it in one sitting, from around 8 PM to 4 AM, and this game of course was Trap Shrine. The goddess was a crossdresser. The enshrined deity turned out to be a cross-dressing goddess that was sealed to marry me? The cross-dressing legend starts here. Jokes aside, it obviously was The Vagrant. Now, this isn't some clickbaity, "this game saved my life" bullshit. Life would have went on regardless, but something about the game felt right at the time, and it helped me a little. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to play it again. Was I just remembering it fondly because of this event, or was the game actually that good? Well, the answer is the second. There's one thought that came to mind after I played it. The devs had fun making this game. The only other title in the past few years where I had this thought as well was a little game called Hakoniwa Explorers. That one, however, is a story for another video or stream. Just to finish up my medical leave story for those that care. After being away for about 1.5 months, I got back to work and was working on a treatment. But about 2 to 3 weeks later I got basically fired. Covering that part would take a bit longer though, so I leave it at that. To wrap this up though, I want to quickly talk about OTK Games' next project, Detained Too Good for School. I'm going to be honest here, this game looks just as charming as The Vagrant. This time instead of some fantasy world, it is playing in modern times. And just as fitting, it is a delinquent/gangster setting whose story follows a classic revenge plot. I can't wait to play it, and hope that once I do, that you'll be joining me on stream. But until then, all that exists is a demo and a devlog, which I might check out. And that's about it. Don't forget to do the usual stuff like subscribing, and other than that, I will see you in the next video.